Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speaker Stories. This week, my guest is Ben Burke. Ben is the CEO of Gradient Geothermal, and he's also our May speaker that's coming up next Tuesday, May 27th. We're at the Wind Coop from 11:30 till 1. This is going to be the day after Memorial Day, so it'll be one of those Tuesdays that kind of feels like a Monday. So be sure to put that on your calendar. Remind yourself that it is actually Tuesday, but you can join us in person at the Wind Coop for the talk. Or you can join online. Either way, you got to register. So go to rmssepm.org and register for Ben's talk. It's going to be a really good one, really informational on geothermal and kind of a geologic workflow with a real world example. Ben, thanks so much for being here. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We really appreciate you speaking with us today. We'll just jump into it like we always do. First of all, tell us where you're from and yeah, where you come from.
So I grew up in Washington, D.C., in the city itself, which is not an origin story for many geoscientists.
That's a new
Uh,
one.
but I grew up mucking around in creeks in Maryland and kayaking on the rivers of the Potomac River and some of the rivers around Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, and really developed a love of geology and particularly surface process through all that time.
Cool. Okay, so did you go into school knowing you wanted to be a geologist, or was that kind of a decision that evolved along the way?
I caught the bug in eighth grade. My high school or my middle school had earth science for a full year in eighth grade. And so I just loved the Flume Lab experiments and everything to do with all the lab work and the learning and the pictures. And it was great fun. So when I got to college, I went straight to Geology 101 and never looked back.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't think a lot of middle schools have that long of a or that immersive of a geologic program. I remember maybe a few lessons or maybe a month or so, but yeah, that's good and inspirational.
Yeah.
Good. Where did you go to college?
So I went to Bowdoin College up on the coast of southern Maine or mid-coast Maine, as they call it, and was a geology and Russian language double major with a history minor. So I was all
Wow.
over the place studies wise.
Okay. Why Russian language double major?
I started taking Russian in high school and just kept it on going through college.
Oh, cool. Okay. So do you still keep up with it today?
Немножко, a little bit. But a lot, I can hear Russian and it's a lot of words I used to know.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so tell me about the program at Bowdoin. What was it full kind of graduate student and undergrad program, or was it?
Bowdoin's a small liberal arts school, and so it was your classic undergraduate only experience, lots of field work, lots of it on cold beaches in Maine or cold rivers up in the mountains away from the coast. But towards the end of that time, I did a senior thesis on marine sedimentation on the Bermuda Rise. And that was my first experience with seismic data, with well log data, with kind of deep time chronometry. And so that was really an inspiration, a first taste, if you will, of what it was like to go into the oil and gas industry, where I went after graduate school. I should add that I went to Dartmouth College for a PhD in geology and studied geomorphology. So I studied the chemical weathering of hill slopes. My
Oh,
advisor had studied the physical weathering of hill slopes and the quantification of those rates using beryllium 10. And so he and I were going to put together this grand total weathering index. And we did, but I also realized I wasn't one of the 50 people in the world who really cared about that subject enough to do a postdoc.
okay.
Uh, but I did get some great travel into study sites in California and Australia and other parts of the US. But I looked around at the alums who were doing various things with their geology degrees, and the oil and gas industry seemed like a good place to go. So I went from there to ExxonMobil after graduation in '06.
Okay, cool. Tell me about the process of getting into Exxon. Was it did they recruit at Dartmouth, or how did you get your foot in the door?
Yeah, New England schools are not really a locus of recruiting for oil and gas, not then and not now.
Yeah.
Um, but starting in my time at Bowdoin, I actually drove down to a Schlumberger job interview in Boston,
Oh,
showed up, and I got some credit for showing up. I made it to a further interview before the really low gas prices of 1998 put an end to their hiring. But during my time at Dartmouth, I was able to get an internship with Anadarko, similarly by flying out to the Rocky Mountain Rendezvous in Laramie
yeah.
and registering and being the only New England student to show up there from there or to there. So I again got credit for showing up. So had an internship with Anadarko in my final summer of graduate school. And once I had that internship, then other companies kind of took note of me. And so I parlayed that into an offer from Exxon as well as a few other shops.
Yeah, cool. Another yeah, the Rocky Mountain Rendezvous, that's created a lot of careers in the
It
industry.
has.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm a living example of it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. What'd you do in your internship at Anadarko?
Prospected for CO2 in the subsurface, particularly around the Deep Ellenberger in West Texas.
Oh, cool.
At the time, Anadarko was looking to add CO2 to pipelines that would likely be coming um, from coal plants and other point sources of CO2 emissions. And this was 20 years ago. So it was interesting that there was already this thought of other subsurface resources being planned for at that time. So I think I finished my project with an estimate of how many cans of Coors Light one could carbonate with the amount of CO2 that I found in some tiny prospect.
Okay.
But I got to talk to the geochemists. I got to talk to the petrophysicists and asking them, what does CO2 look like on a well log? And they said, we don't know. So we got to push the envelope even back then.
Oh, that's super cool. Nice. And so when you went into Exxon, what kind of group were you in? Were you in the research group or where did they put you?
So I went in as a generalist, and I went in with three 8-month rotations. The first one was seismic exploration offshore Madagascar,
Wow.
which was fascinating. I didn't get to go though. Second one was a petrophysics core group rotation where I got to work on petrophysical projects from all over the world. So that was a great survey. And the third one was Equatorial Guinea production. So that was more seismic interp, but with the flavor of building a static model towards the end of that, and then working with the model dynamicists to flow that model. And so that's where I got fairly close to the bid and thought I'd like to be closer to the bid. But then my 3 years after that were with a joint exploration and development company, what Exxon called an OBO group, or operated by others,
Hmm.
or non-op group, more commonly known.
Yeah.
So there we did a lot of seismic interp volumetrics, prospect generation offshore Nigeria and some of the blocks that Exxon was partner to at the time. A lot of travel to Lagos and Po and Paris to talk to the operators of those different blocks and have meetings.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating for a new hire to kind of jump into that world in your first, what, 5, 6 years of your career. You were
It was fascinating to be an international energy man of mystery, what my wife referred to me as at the time. But
uh,
then got an offer to move to Denver and move to Noble Energy in late 10, early 11, just as the shale boom was taking off in the DJ.
oh,
And I couldn't resist the idea of getting closer to the bit. And so made that move, left Houston in sweltering weather and moved in during a snowstorm in early April.
ah, fun. Good intro.
Classic Denver weather. It was my first entree to town.
Okay. Yeah. So at Noble, were you working operationally then in the
Spent
DJ?
15 months answering the phones at 2 a.m. I think sometimes for sport when the rig would just call to see if I'd wake up. But finishing up their vertical well program and beginning the horizontal program that really became a program as Noble kind of reoriented what they had called the Northern Region Group into their Wattenberg Group, which was the structure they had, I think, through the acquisition later on. But worked that geologic operations for 15 months and then parlayed that into a team where I was the only geoscientist on with 22 engineers stewarding about 8,500 wells at the time, looking at recomplete opportunities, looking at why casing or cement failures were a problem. And so I became a sort of jack of all trades geoscientist.
Oh,
And
cool.
that's where sort of an entrepreneurial bug sort of started kind of within me.
Yeah.
Um, So it was really fun to work on old wells, new wells, help the legal department even by doing some geochemistry on oils and saying, hey, this definitely came from our well, or in some cases, hey, this didn't,
Yeah.
based on isotopes and biomarkers.
Wow. No, that's super cool. So, your career path maybe is a little bit different than some where, some people jump out of school and go operations and then kind of get into more research or kind of big scale, offshore development. How did you kind of navigate that? Was that fun for you just to kind of go from that kind of offshore, geophysical world to more of an onshore operational role? Was that stimulating, or did you feel like it was fun? How did you navigate
It
that?
was great fun. I really enjoyed getting close to the bit, being able to test my ideas or ideas within a team setting, quickly figure out if we're wrong or right, and then move on, change things up or optimize
Yeah,
uh, as we went. And
the
so,
timelines are quite different.
yes, yeah. But it was fascinating to be at the very beginning of the DJ kind of Nio Codel boom
Yeah.
uh, here in Colorado, and kind of at this point sort of see that through into a more mature phase, we could say now, but also get the idea through moving from Noble to Fidelity Exploration and from Fidelity Exploration to Fifth Creek, which was a private equity backed startup in 2015, to kind of move to smaller and smaller shops where I wore more and more hats and interacted with a wider variety of stakeholders.
Oh, okay. So, Fidelity, were you working the Cane Creek with that in the Paradox,
Didn't
or?
get to work Cane Creek, but I got to enjoy some of the very interesting thrust faulting interpretations that came out of their operations team. Now, I worked Williston Basin for a bit with them, and then helped work with Goldman Sachs to help sell the company,
Okay,
uh, as that was announced in early to mid 2015.
gotcha, gotcha. Cool. And then Fifth Creek after that, was that your last oil and gas position
Now,
for?
Fifth Creek I was not a founding member there, but I was a basement or a ground level employee. Uh, was with them start to finish into the merger with Belbert Corporation in March of 18.
Okay,
That was an entity that then rebranded as High Point Resources. Was with them start to finish from 18 to early 21.
gotcha.
And it was at that point that I stepped out to kind of take on co-founding and growing transitional energy, which was the first geothermal concept
Okay.
early in the decade.
So what led you kind of out of oil and gas world? What was the impetus of that decision?
For me, water had always been a big part of my career. Even between undergrad and graduate school, I worked as an environmental consultant around Metro New York and Metro Boston for 2 years. So I was cleaning up water, doing a lot of water chemistry work. And in my time, first with Exxon, but then at the subsequent companies, was using the geochemistry of water to help understand petroleum systems. And through that, I started seeing that there was a lot of hot water out there. In fact, people would be burned on pipes and pipelines, and it was a safety issue in some cases.
Hmm.
So as I realized there was a connection there that as geothermal equipment, power gen equipment dropped in price, I could use some of my skills both in the water realm and understanding plumbing, if you will, but also seeing that there's a resource out there that's produced every day and unmonetized, just cooling off on surface. And so that became the origin of founding Transitional Energy and parlaying that into gradient geothermal,
Okay.
around taking a resource that's considered a waste product, making it a valuable resource for power or for heat.
Awesome. That's very entrepreneurial. That's cool. I always like to ask this question, and I don't know that I ask it very elegantly, but through your career, like I think like we're probably in a similar age and experience range where we're kind of getting to the point, or if not already, that we're mentors for a lot of people that might be coming into, whether it's geothermal or oil and gas or whatever. But we're at that kind of range. What do you think makes a good mentor, or how can we be better mentors for those coming in as our industry and it changes quite a bit. Like I don't know. I mean, you can either reflect on past mentors you've had or experiences you have, but I think it's kind of important for me, but hopefully for our listeners, like on, how do we get better at mentoring people into our industry?
I think you're absolutely right. Mentorship is so important, and as we've reached mid-career, that opportunity to give back is there. I think I'd answer that question two ways. One, I think there's more structured mentoring and giving back through being an affiliate professor at a school or volunteering to lecture, whether it's in K to 12 settings or in college or graduate settings,
Yeah,
sitting on committees and such as well for master's and PhD students. But then the more informal type of mentoring happens when talking with folks at professional society events and events both here around Denver, but more generally, and being part of mentoring groups. But I think it all comes down to being a good listener first
hmm.
and understanding, I think, what the student or the young professional is looking for ultimately, what fires them up. And only through that sort of careful listening, then can you tailor the right sort of advice and the right advice that hopefully hits, rather than being a mid-career professional or an older career professional who's stereotypically seen as droning on.
Yeah,
We don't want to be those people. So I think through listening and really understanding what drives this young person, where do they find passion in the rocks, in the water, in the geoscience, et cetera,
yeah.
and helping them really build that passion greater for themselves.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's great. I sum it up by kind of volunteering your time and being a good listener. I think that's that's probably good life advice too. um, cool. Well, what keeps you fascinated about geology?
Probably the most fascinating thing for me is that we never know it all, and we're always working with uncertainty. There's always new discoveries, whether they're more academic in nature or more applied in nature. Um, and whether they're here on this planet or in others, there's so much great science coming out of NASA and other space agencies around Martian resources,
Hmm.
lunar resources, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I love the intersection of applied and academic concepts. And so occasionally dabbling in actually reading some journal articles, but it's mostly through professional society events and listening to talks is where I sort of keep current on that. But there's a never-ending growth of knowledge that's just fascinating to keep track of.
Yeah, you're so right about that. That is does keeps us entertained and hopefully employed as well.
And getting out of the office and seeing some old friends,
Yeah.
hand on camera there,
Yeah.
with some of this fountain formation and lines that make up the rocks here in the Denver Earth Resource Library, where I'm coming to you from.
Yeah, it's a beautiful background. Um, do you have a favorite rock or mineral or outcrop or something that sticks out in your mind from your endeavors?
Growing up, it was always Sidling Hill in Maryland, where it's a massive road cut where I-68 cuts through one of those relatively small ridges of the Appalachians. But out here in Colorado, where I've spent the last 15 years, um, the Garden of the Gods exposures of the lions in particular are fascinating. And close second to those would be some of the lions and, of course, fountain outcrops at Red Rocks and in and around the town of Morrison.
Yeah,
Just so much stratigraphic variability on offer there that it's easy to spend time just kind of staring at the rock and thinking about the stratigraphy and the process that brought it all there. My kids remind me when I've been staring at the rock for too long, those venues as a family.
as they should. Yeah, I think I was staring at it. We were going up to a concert at Red Rocks and we were on one of the ramps and yeah, the line moved ahead of me and I was
And
not.
there, yeah.
I get reminded too. Cool. So, tell me a little bit about what's going on at Gradient Geothermal. What do you guys do?
So Gradient Geothermal is a company that creates modular power equipment for hot fluid flows. So we primarily lease and sell these equipment modules that make power anywhere from 75 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts.
Wow.
We lease and sell those to oil and gas clients, whether it's three-person shops or majors. We do most of our work here in the States, but we do some work in South America and the Middle East as well. We're moving into owning and operating our own fields with the help of our lead investor, Ex Machina Capital. And we're excited about that and getting into truly into the geothermal power generation space for ourselves.
Awesome.
And there may be a kind of getting into manufacturing as well to kind of further control our timelines and our lead times.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
So there are geothermal companies that operate at the big multi-megawatt scale or big steam, if you will.
Okay.
And we're kind of the opposite end of that. We look like a distributed resource provider, technology provider. We can have 1,000 units out in the field, making hundreds of megawatts potentially, rather than focusing on one or two or five specific locations to go multi-megawatt.
Okay. Very cool. And then your talk, which is coming up next Tuesday, May 27th. What can we expect, or what can our listeners and viewers expect to see at on Tuesday, May 27th?
So I'm going to start with kind of a brief intro to geothermal, even going back to kind of the solar system origin of where does this heat come from, and compare geothermal prospecting and play types to petroleum system analysis.
Okay.
And then from that, parlay those frameworks, those structures, if you will, into our understanding of Blackburn oil field in Pine Valley, Nevada. It's a mature oil field that's been producing since 1982. It's operated by Grand Canyon Oil and Gas, which is a small shop here in Denver and Greenwood Village.
Okay.
Wonderful folks to work with. But now it's 99 point something% water every day. And so they called us knowing there's a thermal resource on hand. We were able to get an assistance agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy through the Wells of Opportunity 2 program and do a feasibility study. And now we're moving into setting power generation equipment out there and really demonstrating what a roadmap to making a megawatt of power load at an existing oil field can look like. I mean, everything from, so we'll talk about what the seismic looks like. We'll talk about the geochemistry and tracers of how the fluid moves. Talk a lot about the facilities and the surface operations and how they can change and what scenarios would drive different amounts of power gen alongside different fluid volumes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. That sounds great. So when you're not strategizing or studying geothermal, what do you do for fun outside of this world?
So I'm a former college ski racer, and so my son has gotten into that. So I go up skiing with him and to attend his training quite a bit. I also bike commute every now and again, all the way from Littleton up
Nice.
to Denver, which is a nice solid round trip.
Yeah.
As a homeowner, I do a lot of home ownership activities like car repair and mowing the lawn and all those things that happen on the weekends, particularly now that it's warm out.
Yeah, it never ends, does it? Cool. Well, thanks so much for being here. So again, everybody, so be sure to check rmssepm.org to sign up, or check your email if you remember. We've got multiple emails out. You can also find us on LinkedIn, and YouTube is where you'll find this video. We have a channel. I've got links to all that posted. But be sure to sign up for Dr. Burke's talk on May 27th. Again, we're at the Wind Coop. We start at 11:30. We socialize for about a half hour, and then the talk will start at noon. Even if you're not in Denver, you can register and be a participant via Zoom. We always encourage people across the Rocky Mountain region or across the world, if that's where you are, to join in, participate. But Ben, thanks so much for being here today, and we really look forward to learning more from you next week.
My pleasure, and looking forward to the talk on Tuesday.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.